Ćao, pozdrav svima, dobrodošli na još jednu IT zajednicu Rijeka. Ovaj razgovor ćemo imati na engleskom, kratki pozdrav svima na hrvatskom. Pozdrav Biljana.
Hello everyone. Nice to see you.
Hi. So today we have Biljana with us. This is another edition of IT Community Rijeka. So we're having this episode about the concept of cybersecurity, the very ABCs of it all. What's it all about? We're going to cover it all. I at least hope so. The very concept of cybersecurity, Biljana, is very wide. So we have a lot of things to cover. We have a lot of different individuals that are in this industry. So can you start telling us a bit about cybersecurity as a whole and what's it all about?
Sure. So how many hours do you have? Just 1 hour? Or? Okay, so cybersecurity, actually, let's start with the terminology. Cybersecurity is something that came up as a very popular terminology in the last couple of years. And you will always have in this field people who say, okay, cybersecurity is one thing, information security is second thing, IT security is third thing, and I don't know, whatever type of security. But what we are talking about here is actually protecting information. Whether it's information in our IT systems, whether it's information we write on different papers, whether it is information that we talk. And information, it's the most crucial, actually, ingredient of all our business processes, everything we do. I'm not sure I understand. Of all the financial markets and decisions that we make every day. So cybersecurity professionals, taking that terminology, are the people responsible for protecting the cyberspace. And this is like modern approach to cybersecurity. Although I prefer actually talking about information security professionals because I think it's much more adequate than just cybersecurity as such. When you enter the field, you most probably come from an IT background. And that's one common misconception about the whole field. I always say it's imposed by the Hollywood movies. When you mention a cybersecurity professional, the first thing that comes to your mind is a hacker, black hat hacker, or someone with a hoodie sitting in a dark basement and coding for hours and hours.
Network security, pen testing, someone writing scripts to crack something. It is a common misconception. I can say that that's kind of a sin of mine also. So I had this misconception of cybersecurity being only a technical thing, only a technical industry. So I kind of disregarded the whole point. So it was kind of, oh, okay, you deal with the people. It's quite easy to deal with the whole process of regulations and people. What matters the most is the technology behind it all. But you don't share my opinion.
Yeah, so it's not all about technology. And from my experience, which is now really over 20 years, to tell you honestly how I feel working in this field is actually like I'm trying to translate what technology people are talking about to the business people and what the business people want to receive from the technology people. And there is a third party in this whole story, and that's legal and compliance. So I'm trying to make sure all those three different types of people understand each other. My background is technology. I graduated from the Faculty of Computer Science and Electrical Engineering. And my first 3 years in the field were as a security software developer. I was really working with, photography mainly, secure communications, PKI infrastructure, and so on. And very soon I realized this cannot work itself. So no matter how good engineers you have, how good technology you use, even if you kind of overcomplicate the technology, sometimes you use multiple protective controls and you make the whole thing very, very difficult. And complexity is always an enemy to good security. If you don't have exact awareness of how important cybersecurity is at the top management level, that is willing to spread this awareness to every single employee within your company, you are never going to achieve cybersecurity. Like you could see last couple of weeks, and we are still talking about the SolarWinds incident, and one of the ex-CEOs said, this is some intern's fault. That's such a misguided sentence to even be publicly said, because intern is not here to worry about the cybersecurity of the entire company. He is to know what he's supposed to do, what he's not supposed to do, and why. If you don't explain to those people why they should do something, why they shouldn't do something, if you don't educate them, if you don't continuously raise awareness, there is no technology that is going to help you. So this is why, it's both technology and people. And I also am using this opportunity as well. There is one other huge issue that we are facing in the field, and that's a lack of diversity. We do have some kind of entrance barriers into the field. If you look at those job descriptions for the people that are supposed to take on security roles, even from very basic ones like security analysts, I don't know, they are already asking for cybersecurity certifications. Although it's obvious these people that are just entering the field cannot have the experience required to actually get those certifications. Maybe we are here making a little bit of mistake, because I think the whole field is based on knowledge, and you gain knowledge if you are interested into something. So you are a DevOps engineer, right? You like what you do. You want to learn more about that. And you perceive security as something, that's some requirement that I have to fulfill, some patch that I have to implement, there's some vulnerability that I have to fix. But you don't understand, what's going on behind this. And you have to do that, or something big may happen. But then we come into the question of understanding what exactly can happen. I think sometimes in having this understanding, but it's not the best way. It's really helpful when you have compliance requirements. Although I always say compliance is not the way to do security. It's just doing the minimum if you just focus on compliance. But it's more about understanding risks. And it's about risk assessment and risk management. And in order to do the proper risk assessment and risk management within your company, you need to have people who actually understand what they are working on, what security controls they are taking care of, what impacts if something happens there may be on the business processes they are part of. So this is like really, really huge and a very, very extensive field, and totally whoever wants to find his place in the field, because it covers so many different domains, they can do it. They just need to gain that knowledge, to gain experience, and there are many ways to do that.
So what I'm hearing is the most secure practices come from combining people, processes, and technology, is what you're saying. So you have to,
Yes, exactly.
without those three, you cannot actually have a secure system. It is always baffling to me that big companies and really huge systems make these sometimes rookie mistakes, and they approach the whole problem very naively, I would put it. How do you explain that paradox? Because I would presume that the project isn't the problem. So what is the issue? You kind of hinted that it's the kind of a mindset issue, but
I think
is it only go on?
All those problems, especially if it's a big company, if you're talking about, I don't know, 30,000 people company operating worldwide, they should have actually a very mature security posture. If they don't, that only means that the management itself is not aware of how important information security is, that they do not invest enough. And maybe that's because people who understand where is the problem, all those people working in the company, within IT systems, within security departments, whatever, maybe they don't have a good way of presenting to those decision-making people what is the actual problem, what can happen, and how much it will cost them. We have been struggling with this for decades. How to make, that's what I said, most of the time I do my job, I feel like I'm translating whatever whoever wants to say to each other. And I think the biggest problem lies in there, because if you are aware of a problem and you think a company is not doing enough to prevent it, and you cannot explain exactly what will happen, and then you come up with some scenarios, and you don't have, on one side, maybe you don't have enough information to provide to the management, what can be the consequences of some security breach and so on. Or maybe you just don't have what they are looking for. They are looking for financial figures. They want to know how much it's going to cost. And how would you, as someone who is not positioned well in the company, is maybe working all the way beneath, I don't know, somewhere hidden in the IT department or somewhere in the basement, you don't have this information. And there is a huge gap between people who do have information, who make decisions, and these who see the actual problems, but do not have the right type of information to present the problem to the management. And last couple of years, there was a change in the States, actually, United States laws, where they say that cybersecurity should be discussed as a board level issue. And they kind of mandate now that even the board is a different system from what we have here in Europe. So you have a CEO of the company, and then you have a board of directors. And the CEO is the only employee of the board of directors, actually. They are supposed to for all those reports that come to the board of directors, they need to also see reports around cybersecurity risk. And this is like going one step further. So some companies still struggle with presenting cybersecurity risk to the management, and of course, those that have overcome that issue with positioning CISOs at the right place, designating vice presidents of information security, discussing it at the management meetings. They are now even putting in one step up, and this is great. But you still have so many companies that don't even see it, that you find conflicting roles, that you find security managers struggling to be heard, that you find people that are not invested in knowledge, that they can, they don't actually have budget. So it really depends on the maturity of the company. And from what I learned in my work on the projects, when you have a company that is really looking forward to developing new products, new solutions, and putting them into the market, they want to make sure information security is an integral part of all those solutions, products, so whatever other business initiatives they undertake. So these companies are aware, and they are not waiting for some kind of compliance requirement or some legal requirement or a new law to make sure security or privacy or whatever else is integrated into their business. They're doing it themselves to protect their businesses. And this is where we need to be.
So I had this experience firsthand where...
I can't hear you, sorry.
Can you hear me now?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Wait a second.
Can you hear me? Okay, there.
You can hear me though.
I can hear you fine. I can hear you fine. Could be. Maybe switch to audio from the speakers. Okay, cool. Can you hear me now? Okay. Okay, can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly all the time. So can you hear me?
Yeah, I couldn't hear you, so I'm just...
Okay, it must be the headphones. All right, sure. It happens. It's a live stream, as I said before, so things happen. Yeah, so I witnessed this firsthand where an investor had a lot of inquiries and a lot of questions regarding security when it comes to one company that I know. They had extensive background checks of employees even. And it kind of baffled us, the details that they wanted. They even specified which type of device we are using when we are accessing some sensitive systems and stuff like that. So I could tell that there was a switch in a way of a mindset. So suddenly this was major concern to a lot of potential investors, partners, etc. So I kind of saw it maybe a year ago. I kind of felt it, and for the first time, I kind of you probably know a lot more cases, but if I'm sure the community will know heartbleed bug. I don't know if anyone remembers that bug. I think it was back in 2013, where you could actually see the data very easily from any server, and it was easily accessible. It was kind of random, but you could see it, and it was a kind of a wake-up call. And the whole Cambridge situation with Facebook and etc. It was made public. It was like, okay, this is getting serious. We have to step up and we have to be serious about the whole thing. That is why I think cybersecurity is starting to become something of a requirement, something that we need to check off, and it becomes something that we have to have and we have to take care of, and it has to be some sort of a culture within the company to be like that. Some sort of a requisites, or I would put it like a hygiene, in the sense that you have to take care of it. So I wanted to cover the very beginnings that you had. So if I understood it correctly, you were a software developer at the very beginning of your career, and then you kind of went from being more of a tech-oriented person to being a hybrid, a blend, a bridge between two worlds. So you had these people that are not technical at all, and you communicated between the both of them. You communicated towards the both sides of the world. So this is always interesting to me, because I think there are a lot of roles in IT that have similar structure, similar way of communicating. So how did you figure that out? How did you come and start socializing, talking to people? How did that happen? Did you have some project where you had to communicate with a lot of people, translate things? How? I would like to see that process happening.
So my first 3 years were, so you said one funny thing, how did I start socializing? Like I wasn't really social, but
but you have like it's a different world. It's a different world.
I know, yeah, I know what you mean. That's okay. So I spent my first 3 years in Ericsson, and first we were working on a telecom project, and then we started working on a different project, which was primary healthcare for Croatian public health institution, and there appeared something that was strange to me at that time, and that was the health level 7 standard. Mm-hmm. And we had to develop a solution in accordance with the health level 7 standard. And that's when I first realized, there are some things called standards in all this cybersecurity that are not really technical standards. I was very aware of the technical standards, but this was something a bit different. It was more of business process management standard and so on. And then I went further in some aspects of the projects. I met for the first time something called ISO, at that time 17779, and then it became later ISO 27001. And then we had in the year 2005, Croatia wrote information security law for the first time. And this is when things really started happening, because in those laws, it was mentioned that companies that are subject to this law should have those 27001 or 1779 standards implemented, not certified, because you cannot force someone to certify. And then in 2007, this is when the whole level of awareness was raised. And we had public consultations around that law. That's when I first met the people, talking about security from some different aspects than just technical side. And actually, before that, I figured, all right, here's no one in Croatia that actually knows something about all this. Let's find out who are the people who actually already do this. And I started looking for people worldwide. who are familiar with what we are talking about, with information security laws at the national level, with the information security, what was this? Those international kind of mutual agreements that every country has to participate in and so on. So I found around 30 people that were really top experts in the field of cybersecurity. Some of them leaning more towards governance, risk, compliance. Some of them leaning more towards technical aspects of security. And I, with my company at that time, where I was working then, invited them to come over to Croatia and hold an InfoSecond so-called conference. The first one was in 2005, so we invited 30 really top-notch experts in Croatia for 5 days to share knowledge with us. And attendees of those conferences were people who were really just starting to deal with information security at this organizational level. Mostly at that time coming from government institutions, but also big companies like INA, like Merck, like JANAF, like, in Croatia, these are different companies. However, these people were mostly from the United Kingdom and the United States. And that became my network of people. And we kept in touch ever since. So we held these conferences for 2-3 more years. And then actual projects started happening, really big ones. I moved to another company. And some of these projects, on some of them we collaborated as colleagues, as experts. And later on, they invited me to some projects in the States, in the UK, and so on. So this was the network I was a part of. And that's when I actually figured out what it is all about. And, you have those two sides. We always had the management track and the technical track of whatever we did in projects, in conferences, in seminars, whatever, within the meetings in the company and so on. You have to adjust the message you want to give to the audience who is listening to that message. And my personal affiliation was more with the people on the business side, because I was able to understand the technical side of the story and somehow give them the right information, the business people that they need to hear. While so many colleagues still have this kind of, and sometimes I even agree with them, they say, why would I need to adjust my message to business terminology? And they expect from me to speak business language. And why shouldn't they adjust what they have to say to us as technicians? Today, no one is supposed not to know about technology. And more time goes by, we should expect the same from the other side, right?
Sure.
So these business managers should be able to talk to us as technical guys as well. However, it's not yet working, but I think it's getting really better and better. But you could listen to funny stories. I don't know. I really enjoyed listening to Mark Zuckerberg explaining to congressmen in the United States on privacy issues, and the questions these guys were asking were like, oh my God, don't you really know a little bit about technology? So this is a struggle, and we need people that have enough social skills, as you said, to understand and connect both worlds.
Mm-hmm. So you moved a bit more to the organizational part of cybersecurity, and you started dealing with things that are called risk assessments, governances, compliances. What is that? What is a risk? Strategy. Can you tell me a bit more? So what is a risk assessment? What is governance? What is compliance? So what does it do?
So what do I do? So the thing I like to do most is actually setting up the processes that define how these things that you mentioned are going to be fulfilled within the company. So when a company doesn't have actual risk assessment and management process, it cannot really say they are taking good care of information security. It sounds kind of terrific to people, especially in IT companies, like risk assessment and management. And they always think, this must be something complicated, I don't know how to do that. And then they turn to different templates that they can find online. And then try to just download those templates and try and say, oh, this is our risk assessment methodology. It looks exactly like all other risk assessment methodologies in the world, and none of them works because they are not adjusted to their specific environment. And sometimes they overwhelm themselves with doing those risk assessments and actually not producing any meaningful results. What I do, I try to help them and establish a methodology that works. And this is something that will involve people working in different processes, in different teams, in different departments, to see where they may see some kind of scenario that would affect either one of those three components of information security: confidentiality of information, their integrity or availability, and to really think about from their aspect of work, are we doing all the things necessary so this doesn't happen? So, for example, we have classification policy in the company. Are all our people aware of the classification policy? And do we actually classify our information? And then do we really protect our information in accordance with the classification policy? Next example, we have, physical security controls. So are these actually implemented, and do people obey those physical security controls, or they leave the door open, share their cards to whatever other people? Then we have network security controls. What is the technology we are using for this network security? How are we monitoring our systems? What is happening with the logs? What kind of information we share with our, now especially how those security operations centers and everything else, and you kind of rely on someone else to warn you if something going wrong and so on. But these controls are very often kind of designed and documented well, but not really implemented. And the biggest problem is no one is measuring these controls. No one is measuring the efficiency and effectiveness of these controls. So what I'm seeing lately is a bunch of companies buying some solutions that are presenting beautiful dashboards for the management, and that tell you, last month we had so many incidents, we had so many vulnerabilities, we had so many patches, we had so many, educations or whatever. But no one is saying, okay, but how many do we really want to have? And what is our target value? And how are we measuring our progress towards this target value? And all of that is actually dependent on how well we manage risk. And when I ask for risk assessment reports, this is something you should have. And my favorite company is when I see this risk assessment is done continuously. So anyone can report a risk, any kind of problem that they see, not just once a year in these companies that have some kind of, mandatory risk assessment. Doing it once a year really doesn't mean anything. Risks happen every day. So I see the reports, and then I see risk treatment activities they are going to do. And some of them are for 6-7 months still open. No one has done anything about that. So they are still exposed to that risk. So I go and ask, why is this still open? What's happening? And then you find out about the real problem within the company. Is it the lack of communication? Is it the lack of power within the information security office? Or is this CISO position wrong? Is there no budget? Is this maybe management does not understand? So these are kind of things that we deal with and that we help companies fix. Two different versions of our projects. One is a big company that has number of people in information security for almost each domain, like access control department, secure code room, network security department, and so on. They start to overcomplicate. And then you have those, political struggles within the security departments itself, not to mention all other ones. On the other side, you have small companies that do not have enough resources, that have high pressure from the clients, that have high pressure from the investors because we are young and investors want to see how they are dealing with security. And we are helping them establish the basic processes before they get themselves into something very complicated that they don't know how to use or they don't know how to deal with, and even it becomes an obstacle to their business. And the last thing you want from information security is it to be an obstacle. It should be a business enabler. If you do it right, your business should thrive because of information security. Sometimes people perceive information security as something that is stopping them from doing business, but this is not true. This is only true if you are not doing it right.
So if I got it right, so risk assessment is basically an email that someone can send to you and say, hey, I consider this a risk. I consider this worth looking into. We should do this, this, and this. Or am I wrong? It could be practically an essay of some sort where someone can send you, different department heads can talk to you and you compile it all together and have a risk assessment. Is that somewhat true?
That is something, what you mentioned is just beautiful, but you should also not be overwhelmed, and it should be all, orchestrated well, and there should be a very well-defined channel of communicating these issues. And if someone sees a problem, yes, there should be a place where they should report the problem. There should be a methodology to assess that problem. There should be a team working on fixing those issues or gathering more information. So I think the best example is for the security by design approach. For whatever project that you are working on or developing, before you actually start with the project, you should do the risk assessment related to that specific project. So I had a chance to work as a part of a large organization where our main task was doing these security by design assignments and doing security risk assessments for different projects. So you need to have a structured approach and collaboration, because sometimes these people kind of send the same message over and over, and it's not really getting anywhere. You need to have a good governance. That's the next thing. You said risk management, governance. So governance and strategy and all of that, it should be well put in place as well.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So if I got it right, so with risk assessment, you get the picture, the current state of the company. Let's call it a company, whatever. Then what? What happens next?
Then happens risk management. And in risk management, you usually need collaboration from the different parts of the organization. And in order for the risk management to be efficient, you need to have good governance. You need to have good communication. You need to have, let's say, just budgeting. So different departments in the company, they find they are exposed to the same kind of risk. And not each one of them is going to budget the risk treatment activity for that risk separately, which would make sense. Although it really happens in some big companies in Croatia, where we get invited, to projects or become part of projects. You have practically two different teams in the same companies doing the exact same thing, and they don't know about each other. Or you have usually gathering company trying to purchase solutions or technical whatever equipment or something they have already purchased. So this is not good governance. So what happens next is actually making sure that the amount of money and time and people that we are going to invest in mitigating some risk is really justifiable before business. And every responsible company needs to know whether or not they are spending their money on the right things. And then the third component is actually, are we doing it fast enough? So this risk assessment usually gives you results in different levels of risk, categories of risk, and you have to decide what risks should be treated first and how, and what is important or crucial or urgent, what is a high risk. Now you have the whole privacy and data protection issues as well. And those same companies, most of them that were conscious enough, they were doing privacy risk assessments as well. But they now have to look, because of the GDPR, so I'm talking about mostly European Union stuff, not only to look at the risk for the company and what can happen to the company, but what can happen if it's personal data we are talking about to the individuals. And this is a little bit new component that also has to be integrated well into the existing processes.
So it seems like really hard work when you have to dive deep into a company and figure out how to make peace, how to make other departments make peace with each other, or at least some truces in order to have some work done. It sounds, from my perspective, it sounds horrible. Like you have to, it's the worst possible scenario where you have two conflicting, let's put it like that, two conflicting sides where they are waiting for the opportunity to pick at each other. And then you come here with a project or something like that, and they say, oh, okay, this is a perfect opportunity to point out how this different department is less valuable than ours, something like that. Did you have these situations? How do you handle it? How do you get out of it?
It depends, but something that I really did not expect is ever going to happen to me was quite recently. I had a project where I had to audit the auditors. So we didn't talk much about auditing all this, but you have governance, risk compliance, you have also the audit impact. So someone is going to audit you. And this guy or this team can be internal team or this can be external team. And we had a case actually the team auditing the company was not convincing enough that they actually deliver, let's say, the picture as it is, but a little bit modified, So this is something like, oh my God. So audit is supposed to be independent. It's supposed to give you the actual picture. Is what you were saying, checking controls, departments, checking organizational controls, technical controls, processes, everything else. You have mechanisms, you have auditors, whether they are external or internal. And
they gave the modified version of reality, not the real version.
Modified, but they maybe were just, I don't know, maybe you saw, I published it on LinkedIn, that really sometimes upsets me is the checklist approach.
Oh,
and they keep using those checklists. And when you use checklists, you limit yourself so much. You just say, okay, this control is implemented. Oh, yeah, it's cool. Show me some evidence. Okay, no matter that evidence is like 3 years old, but you have evidence. Okay, let's move on to the next one. This is not the way to do it. So you need to take this proactive approach. And as I said, you have to handle all those people, the issues. You have to talk to people. You have to get to know the process itself, to understand what the company does, what is really important for this company, how management thinks, what they are willing to invest to, what do they consider a waste of time. So this is, I think I enjoy that. I really do. But sometimes I can find myself in a very inconvenient position. And then the social skills come into the first place.
Yeah. Maybe this stems from maybe they kind of relate to all of that, like, oh, it's bureaucracy. It's like something work safety related. We have to do it. Okay. Maybe that frustration or some that relation towards cybersecurity stems from that. Perhaps that is some sort of a thing. And I've kind of noticed that GDPR is fear. Like GDPR equals fear. And people are motivated to implement their policies, sometimes very just badly, into their companies because of fear, not because they care, not because they really care about their clients' data and stuff like that, or not to have that data being sent into the wrong person, company, whatever. It's fear. It's like, oh, these big fines, I'm scared. So I think maybe I'm wrong, but cybersecurity, especially when it comes to companies that are kind of out of the some sectors, I don't want to name them because I'll probably name them wrongly, are more motivated by just fear of fines. Maybe IT companies, maybe the banking sector, maybe some other sectors are kind of motivated in a sense, okay, we have to figure this out. This is serious. And they are maybe approaching this a bit more seriously. But others are kind of motivated by fear. And I think that is something that is a gap that we need to bridge as an IT community.
But you will always have those companies that are motivated by fear and not willing to do anything else until they have to. And that's when I say security driven by compliance is totally wrong type of security. This is not what we want. But yes, sometimes it's helpful because you have to admit, even if you do not have any type of laws or constraints or anything, most of those companies wouldn't even do the basics. And now we have something that is actually pushing them to do at least basics, although this is all wrong and they can type of do it in a wrong way. And if they are driven by fear, they totally do not understand the common sense of all those regulations. I never said that the GDPR is a bad regulation. I think it's a great regulation. If you understand it, you will see it's driven by common sense. It's driven by privacy by design, by security by design, by the risk management. You don't have to apply all those articles if you do not fulfill the requirements for applying all those articles. You do not have to write a bunch of papers and documents if you know what you're actually doing with your data. The same thing applies to security, you know. So it's just should be driven by common sense, and it's always a common sense and forward-looking, proactive.
I think that it's starting to be driven by the market itself. And the people are starting to ask for those changes to be implemented and security policies to be implemented. We have a lot of names that I could drop, like Edward Snowden and stuff like that, and people like that had kind of showed the way of how things could go wrong and how some data is manipulated with. And that isn't quite the topic of today's talk, but it kind of, I think it made people aware about the possibilities that could happen and what happens to their data. And it kind of made them aware of, I always say like this, I had this neighbor like 10 years ago that had his Wi-Fi open with no password. And he told, his argument was, well, I don't care. If someone wants to come and, I don't know, download something, let him. And I told him, and I told him, fine, but someone can come up to your house with a laptop and send a threatening email to the president, and you will get the blame. Do you get it? Do you understand it? So, and at that time, he put up the password and hidden his network and started being paranoid. But the thing is, fear itself is a good motivator. It's not something bad, but we should strive to kind of be very aware of our data. So that is the whole point, I think, of the cybersecurity sector.
And that are the most important for our business processes and the customers' data as well.
Sure. I want to cover we're getting to the end of the talk, so I just want to cover how do you see and what do you recommend to all of the people that are interested in cybersecurity and are perhaps software developers as you were, or DevOps, or project managers, or are in the legal business, or are working in a bank. How should they approach things, and how should they approach cybersecurity? Is there even a way for someone in the law who has just finished law school to be in cybersecurity?
Sure, there is, and I think the best way to approach the field, first understand if you have passion for the field. You should have passion for this field because it's complex, and if you don't really feel it, then it may become, I don't know, overwhelming or boring or whatever. So first, passion. Identify your passion. Identify what type of cybersecurity you are really interested in. Is this more technical, network, pen testing, cloud security, software security? Is it more on governance, is compliance? Is it more on, I don't know, people awareness and that kind of stuff, trainings? And then I think the best and easiest way to enter the field is actually through mentorship. Find yourself a mentor. There are a number of mentoring programs, and I'm participating in a mentoring bite program right now. I have 2 mentees, and for hopefully 3 soon. One of these mentees is actually a lady who's never worked in IT, but she finds cybersecurity field very interesting. She wants to switch to that field, and she asked me for help. The way I'm going to be helping her is I'm going to be directing her, of course, to body of knowledge, at least some basic concepts and understanding what cybersecurity really is all about. And then once we go one step further, it's difficult with someone who's never been in the field. But once we identify what is really from this whole field that someone would like to know more about, then we will focus on that. If you're coming from a technical background or you have already some knowledge, I would recommend going for those cybersecurity certifications as soon as possible. I'm a member of the board of IC Squared, and that's the largest association of information security professionals in the world. We have a number of certificates, and for all of them, you have to prove experience. But before you get the experience, you can study for the exam, you can pass the exam, and then you can wait and gain some experience. This will kind of force you to actually work on those projects. So start going for those certifications. If you are coming from a legal background, I think now it's a perfect time to enter. you will become familiar with, obviously, a part of legal field that deals with cybersecurity or privacy or information security laws. There's a number of initiatives around cybersecurity as a strategy on European level, cybersecurity as a way of collaborating between different nations, 5G and cybersecurity. And these working groups are mostly, legal background persons. So I think that's a beautiful field, even from their point of view. And they can also do a lot in this field. And I think they can, dig deeper into all those issues. What is it we are talking about on cybersecurity laws? What are we talking about on national privacy issues? All big companies, what are they doing with our data? Data protection is actually a legal term. It's data protection in terms of protecting individuals, not what we often perceive as data protection, data security. It's not exactly the same thing. So all of them can find a way to enter. So education, mentorship, certifications. So as soon as you grab either one of those components, it's good. And the most important of all, it's really to network with the right people. I think LinkedIn is a perfect platform for that. I see a lot of my colleagues from the field on LinkedIn. I'm always open, and they are always open to get in touch with you, to answer any question. There are a number of groups. You can see what these people are talking about, interesting news they're sharing. You will find something for yourself there, and start from there.
Yeah, these were all great advices. I learned a lot. You were kind of a lighthouse for cybersecurity for me, because I didn't know anything about it. So I kind of started following you on LinkedIn, and kind of through the days and through all of the status updates and stuff like that, I kind of figured out what's it all about. And I'm quite glad that you are in the committee of ISC squared, if I pronounce it correctly. Thank you, Biljana, for being a part of this show. If anyone has any questions, feel free to leave it in the comments. And if you agree, Biljana, they can, I'm sure that they can contact you directly with some constructive questions about this whole field. Thank you, Biljana. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Take care.
Thank you for inviting me. It was really a pleasure. And I hope I helped someone and made someone interested in cybersecurity.
It was nice having you. And I hope that we kind of inspired and helped someone.